like me and you never considered the intersection of blockchain and national security. We're going to dive into that a little bit further. This time, we're going to look at it from an energy perspective. So our two panelists to cap off our day of programming are Gabe Royal and Alberta's Minister Dale Nally. Give them a warm welcome.
All right. Well, I think we're the last thing standing between these folks and bars and restaurants in the greater Fort Worth area, sir. So
if we're the last thing between them and the bar, then we better keep it interesting.
yeah, we got to keep it interesting for sure. Absolutely.
I'm going to do my bit. I have a special announcement that anyone in the in the mining space, fintech, digital assets will be very interested in. So I'm gonna be working that into this conversation.
All right. Absolutely. Sounds good. All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Dale Nally. He's a Minister of Service for Alberta and red tape reduction. Minister Nally was recently resworn in as the Minister of Service, Alberta and red tape reduction on June 9th. He previously served as the Associate Minister of Natural Gas and Electricity. So some of your bona fides here, sir. I heard someone earlier tell me that Alberta is like the Texas of the North. So why do you think miners and global energy companies more broadly are attracted to a place like Alberta or Texas? But really, what makes a good energy market?
At the end of the day, it comes down to culture. We both have freedom-loving, entrepreneurial residents that embrace opportunity for economic prosperity, and that's what we have in Alberta. We have the only open and free market for electricity, very similar to Texas. In fact, we feel like we're coming home when we come to Texas, and I don't mind saying that this is my second trade mission to Texas. The only difference between Alberta and Texas is you have better barbecue. That's the only difference. Yeah.
All right. Well, we typically think of economic partnerships in terms of trade between large nation states, but how do individual states and provinces like Texas and Alberta partner with one another on energy, and what makes Texas a good economic partner from that standpoint?
Well, I would say what makes Texas a great economic partner is you are currently importing 3 million barrels of oil a day from Alberta, and so we love that. So thank you very much, and keep doing it. But seriously, we have so much in common in the terms of we both have open and free markets. We embrace mining, but we are a destination for clean, responsibly produced energy. And whether it's our oil, whether it's our natural gas, we don't have some of the cleanest. We have the cleanest natural gas in the world. And I say that because we have the highest methane emission reduction standards. And that means that the very last drop of natural gas that is produced on this planet should come from Alberta because it's the cleanest. And that's what attracts jurisdictions like Texas, because especially with the geopolitical situation in Europe, now more than ever, we see the importance of energy security. And jurisdictions like Texas want to do business with secure Western partners, just like we want to trade with secure Western partners. And in Texas and Alberta, it's just a great relationship.
So as a policymaker, how do you think about energy independence and national security?
They are absolutely aligned. We have been saying this for a long time. We have been saying that stop importing dictator oil, stop getting your oil from jurisdictions in the Middle East that don't treat women with respect, that don't have human rights regulations like we do in Canada. Don't get oil from Russia. Get it from a secure Western democracy because it's dependable. And the person that mined that barrel was someone who had a mortgage-paying job and who had their rights respected. And that's what you get. And we've been saying that. And, not everyone listened until we saw what happened in Europe. When Russia invaded Ukraine, that's when all of a sudden energy security is front of mind. And people now see that, do you know what? You're better off to do business with a responsible producer from a secure Western democracy. So absolutely, they are aligned. Yeah.
In what blocks, what do you see as blocks right now in things that are easily fixable, maybe from a policy standpoint, or things that we can do tomorrow that would make either the relationship between our nations or provinces like Alberta, individual states that would make us more energy independent? Things we could do probably very quickly.
Well, I feel like I wrote that question because what we could do is we could complete the KXL pipeline, and I don't want to get too political here, but you do have a progressive president who canceled the KXL pipeline, and it was going to ship, I believe it's over 600,000 barrels a day of oil from Alberta to the United States. It was going to be clean, responsibly produced energy, and he canceled that. And his reason for canceling it was simply performative activism, because to this day, you are still importing oil from the Middle East. At that time, when the KXL was canceled, you were actually importing oil from Russia, if you could believe it. And I'm telling you, and I know this is not a message for Texas because you get that message, but it's a message that your president needs to hear. Do business with a responsible Western democracy with clean, responsibly produced oil.
Well, one of the things I think you've already done, just reading up on some of your efforts there, it's you've made efforts to streamline approval processes for low-cost natural gas plants. With all the focus on renewables, and we know you have great renewable capacity there in Alberta, like we see here in Texas, well, why is maintaining some level of natural gas production, continuing to bring that online, why do you see that as an essential part to the energy transition?
Well, let me just say that natural gas is the cleanest fossil fuel there is. And when you get your natural gas from Alberta, it has the highest methane emission reduction standards. So it's clean, it's responsibly produced, and it is a reliable source of energy. And don't get me wrong, I love renewable. I love wind. I love solar. It's cheap. And I love it to enhance the base load electricity that comes from natural gas. But in jurisdictions like Alberta, base load electricity is going to come from natural gas for the foreseeable future. Someday renewable will be able to provide that, but we're not there yet. We're a long ways off. So it's important that we have reliable energy and not the intermittency that comes with renewables.
So switching a little bit to the renewable side of things, we talked about synergies between Texas and Alberta, wind, solar. One thing that's not talked a lot about is potential for geothermal, and we know you have that there in Alberta. What can you elaborate on some of that, and then maybe are there potential opportunities for partnering with miners? People, we have a whole Bitcoin mining stage over there talking for where are these opportunities we can find either stranded energy or low cost energy. Can you elaborate a bit on Alberta's geothermal capacity?
Yeah, we've got companies in Alberta that are going down the geothermal route, and it's early days. One of them is Ever. They've got a patented Ever loop, they call it, and they will take 2 natural gas wells that have been decommissioned, and they will actually connect those 2 gas wells, creating a loop and benefiting from the geothermal energy that it gets from that. Now, it's early days, and I don't think that we've got it, that it's actually, it's not scalable at this point, but it's something that they're working on, and I see that as a viable alternative down the road. We're very excited about the opportunities because we have a lot of gas wells in Alberta, and so there's a lot of opportunity for geothermal. So down the road, I could see that playing a big role.
So, and we know miners will generally follow the path of least resistance when it comes to either the anticipated regulatory environment or just seeking out low-cost energy. Where are some areas where you think Alberta is doing well? You talked about having a deregulated energy market structure, how important that is. And then where maybe some areas for improvement, what do you think can be done even better to get more miners to either migrate to Alberta or, hey, bring your startup here. You want to start operations, come here.
Our biggest challenge is the electricity grid. Well, we have expensive electricity in Alberta compared to other jurisdictions, although I understand it's more expensive in California, so we're not the most expensive, but we're not at that we're not below 4 cents where a lot of the Bitcoin miners need to be at. And so for that reason, we don't see that as something that is going to be a big solution for miners. But that said, there are other opportunities. We have orphaned and abandoned wells, which provide an opportunity to press those wells back into production and to use that gas to generate electricity. Our Alberta Utility Commission, which is our regulator, is approving 10 megawatt generators or less in 5 business days. So there's huge opportunity for pressing those natural gas wells back into business. But we've also seen other creative solutions. Alberta has some of the cheapest natural gas in North America. Certainly, it's called AECO, and it's priced well below Henry Hub. And sometimes AECO gas is selling below the cost for producers to get it out of the ground, and they don't have the capacity to shut it in for a lot of different reasons. So we're finding that miners are looking to partner with gas companies so that they can mine Bitcoin when the price is below the cost to produce gas. And then when the price goes high enough on AECO, then they sell it back on the spot market. And so we're seeing partnerships like that evolve. We're seeing other partnerships, companies that want to mine Bitcoin, but then use the heat that's powered for hothouses, for greenhouses. So there's so many creative solutions. There's a gentleman in this room right now, and he's got an incredible idea that he's working on, which is a waste to energy. And it's absolutely fantastic solution. So we're seeing all sorts of solutions for mining in Alberta, and there's not just one way to do it.
What would you say, what is the current ratio in terms of behind the meter mining, front of meter mining, and maybe a hybrid approach right now in your province?
Well, the most of the mining is behind the fence. There is a little bit that's happening. We have a bit of it's a microgrid in Alberta around Medicine Hat. And so they're separate grids. So there is some happening connected to the grid there, but most of the mining that's happening is behind the fence, or it's flare gas, things like that. Very cool.
So you guys have a similar system in that there's decisions that can be made at the province level, whereas in Texas, of course, we had members from all the different states, blockchain councils up here, and decisions that can be made at the state level, and then of course federal, national governments as well. Can you describe a little bit of the relationship there? I mean, maybe opportunities for not just to focus only on tensions, but opportunities for improvements there in those relationships to make everyone come online a little bit better. Even though I know you guys have a very unique, your grid is unique, your approach to regulated versus deregulated energy is unique. But what are some opportunities you think between the province and Canada as a whole that might even illuminate similar dynamics between Texas and the U.S. at large?
Well, I would just remind you, my title is Minister of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction, and in Alberta we have a fundamental belief that less government is more. And in fact, you would probably agree with me, Gabe, that your best days are days when you don't think of government. That's our goal in Alberta. We don't want you thinking about government. We want to get out of the way of job creators.
Well, I teach government, so it's really hard to do, but
you talk to any job creator, any entrepreneur, and their best days, they don't think of government, and they don't want to. And so we view government's role as getting out of the way. Now don't get me wrong. I'm addicted to clean air and clean water just like you are. So a little bit of regulation is responsible. But what we're against is duplication of regulation or unnecessary regulation. And we're looking to create an environment where, as I mentioned, those under 10 megawatt generators, you can get approved in 5 days, and it's just a checklist from the Alberta Utility Commission. And if it's less than 1 megawatt, I don't even know if the AUC even wants to speak to you. Like, it's really the right dynamic for miners. And so I think this is something that other jurisdictions could look at what we're doing. We have a fundamental belief that if you cut corporate taxes, if you reduce red tape, business will come. Investment will come to the province. The other piece that I would add to that is the collaboration. We had a round table today. We had miners from all across Canada. We had miners from the States. And we spent an hour and a half, and I just asked them, what do we have to do to be successful? Because ultimately, I want to be a world-class destination for all things Bitcoin, whether it's the mining, whether it's the digital assets, the fintech, the financial services, all of that. I want to be in Alberta, and very similar to how it is right now in Texas. So we're not looking to take away from Texas's success. We just want to build on it. And this is part of, I mentioned to you, I was going to make an announcement. That's what I'm actually very happy to be up here today telling you, that Alberta is going to be the first jurisdiction in Canada that is going to be creating a roadmap for Bitcoin mining. And this is going to basically spell out everything that we have to do in order to become that world-class destination for mining, for all things Bitcoin. And the best part is, it's not government telling industry what we're going to do. It's industry telling us what we have to do. And so we're in that space now where we're listening. Industry is telling us what they need. Now, we can't give them everything that they need, or certainly we can't give them everything that they want, but we can give them most of what they need. And the more that we can give them, the more we can enable them to be successful. So we're consulting right now. We're listening to what industry wants us to do. And if there's anyone that has ideas here, I would encourage you. If you just Google Dale Nally, Alberta Minister, my email will come up. Please send us an email. We want your ideas on what Alberta needs to look like so that we can be as big as Texas when it comes to mining. And
when you sit down and talk to those miners and you say, hey, what's your wish list? What can we do? What are those conversations like? What are some of those things? Is it very regulatory focused, or is it more practical about economics? What would you say are the biggest things that you keep hearing from those miners?
All of the above. I've heard people say that we need some regulatory framework so that we can provide investment certainty to the investors, so that to minimize some of the scandals that have happened in the past, and so a light touch approach. And I've had other people that today said, we don't want. And by the way, I don't want to stand up a regulator for this. I want it to be the lightest touch possible. But we have regulators already in place, and so other people are saying to us, "Hey, use the regulators that you have, but just carve out a piece for the mining and make sure that it's a light touch." And that's what we're hearing. We're hearing about how else can we cut the red tape to make it easier to press those orphan and abandoned wells back into business, because there is 170,000 abandoned wells in Alberta, and many of them still have gas in them that we could press back into service. So how do we make it easier for industry to come along and to use those wells to continue to mine?
Wow, great. What would you say is you talked about their concern with the regulatory environment, and I'm a public policy guy, and that's kind of what I study. And you said rather than spinning up a new organization and let's create a whole new set of regulations for all this, maybe using the existing infrastructure from a public policy government standpoint and just adding clarity. What is that clarity you think that they're craving that would help?
Well, you use it, the clarity. That's what they want. They just want to know what are the expectations. And one of the regulators that we now have is the Alberta Utility Commission. And I used to have the electricity and natural gas file before this one. So I actually hired the chair of the Alberta Utility Commission. Phenomenal lady by the name of Carolyn Del Reese. And when I hired her on day one, I said to her that I want to approve projects in Alberta as fast as Louisiana did, or as fast as Louisiana does. That was the standard. And some people laughed when I said that, but she didn't. She listened. And that's why we're able to fast track approvals for generators under 10 megawatts. All that's required is a checklist. The regulator is listening and being responsive, and that's what they want.
Great. All right, so we're sitting here, Texas, for 5 years from now, we're having a similar conversation. Where do you want to be in 5 years? We're having this conversation 5 years from now, knowing what you know today, what you've got in the works, how you're trying to partner with miners, the energy transition, everything that's going on. What would you ideally hope to be saying, we were able to do this 5 years from now?
We've done a number of tours since we've been here since Monday. We've toured Bitdeer, phenomenal facility. We toured Core Scientific. We've got some other ones lined up. And so for us, we want to see those 200 megawatt plus facilities in Alberta. And when we can say we've got 4 or 5 facilities that are 200 megawatts plus, then we'll know that we have been successful.
I think something that we were chatting backstage a little bit about my research and the economic impacts of these large scale facilities here in Texas. What would you say to skeptics from your own province, people from Alberta who think, these companies are going to come, they're going to raise they're either going to increase pollution or they're going to raise, I'm going to get a more expensive energy bill. What would you say to those skeptics? What are some misconceptions that, if you had the opportunity to speak right to them in their living room and clear up some misconceptions?
I would say they don't understand the Bitcoin mining business if that's what their position is. And there is a lot of myths about it, that it raises the cost of electricity. But we're seeing in Texas the role that miners play in lowering the cost of electricity because of the load shed options that they have. And so there could be a similar option and an opportunity in Alberta where you're operating off-grid, generating your own electricity, but you're still connected to the grid so that you could export excess electricity to the grid during, when we have capacity issues, when the prices are higher. So I actually view miners as part of the solution to a tight electricity grid capacity versus part of the problem. And so we just have to get the message out that crypto miners, Bitcoin miners are responsible miners, and they contribute to the availability of electricity as opposed to the opposite. And so we just have to get that message out there.
So here in Texas, obviously, there's peak times of the day, certainly certain hours in the summer, where there's almost natural baked-in incentives for miners to turn off, right? Deregulated market. It's hot during the 3 p.m. It's really hot. Obviously, you turn off your machines. You don't want to be spending $100 plus per megawatt hour. And I guess what are the similar opportunities in Alberta? Completely different climate, right? What are the similar opportunities? You guys, you said you call it load shedding. I think here we call it demand response, ancillary services. What are the similar opportunities there? And even though it's a completely different, climate and environment there.
Well, we do have the load shed opportunities, and these are opportunities where larger companies can actually volunteer to shut off, and they'll actually be compensated by the government. But there's another opportunity that I put in legislation when I was the Minister for Electricity, and basically it was to allow companies to create their own generation of electricity, and so they're producing for themselves, but allow them to have the capacity to export to the grid when prices are high. And in fact, a significant proportion of our electricity generation is from non-traditional providers of electricity. There's companies in the pulp and paper industry that are significant net contributors to the electricity grid. There's no reason that Bitcoin miners couldn't do the same.
Do you have any other examples of, you said these non-traditional, you said a paper, was it a paper?
Pulp and paper.
Yeah. Any other?
Suncor, which is an oil sands producer, and they produce a significant amount of electricity for the electricity grid. And like I said, there's tons. Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't touch on a little bit more the national security aspect with you. We were talking a little bit backstage, and we have our adversaries, and you were talking about a place like China, and what if we could export natural gas that you guys have there in Canada to a place like China, rather than seeing them put hundreds of more megawatts of coal-fired power plants that they've got planned online. What are some obstacles to that? What do you think people are currently misunderstanding about that opportunity there?
Well, we have the solution in Alberta. We have a 200-year supply of natural gas. As I mentioned, it's the cleanest natural gas in the world because of our methane emission standards. And we could send that natural gas to Asia and convert their coal-fired power plants to natural gas and cut their emissions in half. But of course, what the challenge for us is leave it in the ground extremists. And they exist in both countries. You have them as well, as do we. And they make it very difficult to get LNG export facilities approved. And that's a problem because we're hurting the environment. The leave it in the ground extremists would say to you, natural gas is not the solution. We need to go from coal directly to renewables. Well, that's great, but it's not happening. We've been saying that for over 10 years now. The fact is, base load electricity for industrial intensive jurisdictions like China, because they're in an industrial powerhouse, they need reliable energy and not the intermittency of renewable at this point to power their industries, and natural gas could be that solution. But because the leave it in the ground approach has stopped Alberta specifically from getting our natural gas to Asia, they're still building coal-fired power plants, not just using coal, they're still constructing coal-fired power plants. And in an environment where we recognize there's a global need to decarbonize, if we could just get our natural gas to global markets, we could stop building coal-fired power plants.
So obviously the key to any switch from coal to natural gas and exporting, to export it, you're going to have to liquefy it. What are the current capacity? What is it? Could you describe the current capacity for Alberta right now to liquefy natural gas and export it versus where you'd like to see it develop and get to?
We have a 200-year supply of natural gas, And those are only the proven reserves. So I would say at this point, I mean, we don't know how much natural gas we could get out to the world, but we could make a big, significant dent. I think we're Canada is number 5 in the world for natural gas production. I mean, we have significant natural gas reserves, and we export significantly to the States, to the U.S. If we could get that natural gas to Asia, if we could get it to India, wow, could we make a difference in reducing GHGs globally?
We've got about 4 minutes left here, and I'd be remiss if we didn't discuss a little bit about energy infrastructure and security, like the literal physical infrastructure security. How do you view this issue? How do you anticipate potential attack vectors against the grid as a security threat? And what are some things that you can talk to us that are being done that either excite you or potentially that we need some help, that people need to know about, that we need to get after?
Yeah, that's a really sensitive one.
All right.
What I'll just say is we believe in energy security. We have to protect our infrastructure. We have to protect our assets. We saw what happened to the natural gas pipeline that goes from Russia to Europe. I mean, when you don't have energy security, that's what happens. And so we have an opportunity in Canada and the United States to have energy security. And there's a lot of different ways that we could promote that. One of them is getting our natural gas to global markets, of course, to help other Western-based democracies. It's also about building another pipeline from Alberta to the U.S. so that we could get our clean, responsibly produced oil and wean the U.S. off of Middle East oil. So there's a lot of things both countries could do to achieve complete energy security.
And so I think, to kind of return a little bit to the renewable energy piece, where do you see Alberta needing most to advance in terms of an infrastructure from that standpoint? We were talking a little bit backstage about the amount of capacity, but there's a bit of a mismatch between the capacity that's there and then what can eventually get delivered to the end user.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and we're actually having that conversation right now because Alberta is unique in Canada. We have the only open and free market for electricity. So consequently, it's Alberta that renewable companies have been coming to. So we have significant investment right now in wind, in solar, but we're having to manage that with a few different factors. We have to manage that with the cost of transmission to connect to the grid. And because there's no requirement that these solar farms and wind farms go to jurisdictions where we need them to go, where we have the transmission built up already. So we have a lot of pieces that we have to figure out, including where do you put the solar panels? We live in a world where 600 million people go to bed hungry at night, and are we comfortable using agricultural land to generate solar? And so I think that we have to answer those questions. We're having those conversations now, and we're going to have more to say about in the future. But it's important conversations that we need to have because there are advantages to renewable. I know I've talked about the benefits of natural gas, but I like how affordable, how cheap solar and wind can be. But it has to be under the right conditions. We have in Edmonton, West Edmonton Mall, which is one of the biggest malls in the world. I think it's number 2. The second biggest mall in the world, and they're looking to put a solar farm, solar panels on top of the mall. Well, that's a great location to put a solar farm. Is on top of the world's second largest mall. Where it's not a great location is prime agricultural land. We need that. We need that to produce food.
All right. Well, we've got barely maybe even time for one last question. So I want to give you an opportunity once more to reiterate your announcement, reiterate kind of what you came here to really do when you visit Texas, and with regard to miners and the opportunities there, and where they can find you.
Well, sorry, where can they find me?
Yeah, you said Google.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I could give everybody my business card, or you could just Google Dale Nally, Minister Alberta, and my email will show up. And so please send me your ideas. If you have things that you need before you can come to Alberta, send us those ideas. We want to hear from everybody. It's industry experts that are going to tell us what our roadmap needs to look like. And we'll know we've been successful when we've got as many 200 megawatt facilities as Texas. when we've got as many miners as Texas. That's when we'll know that we've been successful. So please reach out, send us your ideas.
All right, Minister Nally, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out to the 2023 North American Blockchain Summit. It was the best summit yet. We look forward to hosting you again next year. If you enjoyed the summit or like what you saw in this video, be sure to subscribe. If you're interested in learning more about membership in the TBC, go to texasblockchaincouncil.org to learn more.